Everyone, I'm going to walk through the process of forking a repository that has our weekly exercises in it and show you how to then clone that repository down to your computer, get it opened up inside of IntelliJ, make a change, commit and push those changes, and then create a pull request to send your work off to me. So we'll start off here in the repository for the week 2 exercises. So this is in the organization's repository. You guys have read access to this, but you don't have write access to it. So when you're in a situation like that and you're not officially a collaborator, the thing to do is to fork a repository. Then you can clone it to your own computer, make changes to it, commit, and push your changes to your own repository. And then if you want to eventually share those changes back to the original repository, which is this one, you can use a pull request to do that. And at that point, then in a real-world environment, the owner of that original repository would have the option to merge your changes in. For the purposes of this course, we're going to use that pull request as a way for you to communicate to me that you've completed your exercises, and gives me a way to take a quick look at those and provide any feedback if necessary. So the instructions, and this is typical of how our exercises will appear each week if we have them. So the README here on the first screen will provide the instructions, and they're a bit more detailed this time around because it's our first time forking a repository and going through this process. So typically I'll have instructions about just what to do to complete the exercises and not this other information. So if you need to refer back to this in the coming weeks, just pop back here. So first instruction here says to fork this repository. Then we'll clone it. Okay, so I'm cloning the repository that I fork. That's going to create my own repository. So let's do that and see what that looks like. So I simply click on fork, and I'm going to be asked where I want to fork the repository. Now, I have lots of different organizations for different classes, so that's why I'm getting some options. You likely won't see this. I'm going to choose my own personal repository, which is where you guys would keep this as well. And so the forking or the copying essentially of this repository to my own personal space is complete. And you'll notice now that here I am in my instructor account on GitHub, and there's a note here that this repository has been forked from, and here's the original location. So at this point, coming back to the instructions, I want to clone the repository to my local computer. Now there's several different ways to do that. As we know, we could do this at the command line using the URL here. And I'm going to show you a different way to do this. 2 different ways in IntelliJ. You can, at the welcome screen, choose to check out from version control, or if you've already got IntelliJ open, then you can use File, New, Project, create a new project from version control, and then choose GitHub. So look at both of those options. So here I'm going to head into IntelliJ. Here is the checkout from version control option that I mentioned at the welcome screen. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that and choose GitHub. Okay, so here I can, and you'll see I've got a lot of different repositories that I've accessed here over time. And so to keep things simple here, I'm just going to paste in my URL, which is probably the process that you guys will be using, or should be the process you're using. So right here in GitHub is the URL. Remember that I am in my personal repository at this point, not that original that we forked from. And then back in IntelliJ, I'm simply going to paste that URL in here. It's the Git repository URL. And I can choose where I want to place my projects. So likely you've already got a spot set up on your machine where you're keeping all of your different projects for this course. You've already got 2 at least built. And then choose a directory name. Now I've already got this one created, so I'm just going to add or rename the directory so that I don't have that conflict. And then go ahead and hit clone. And as you get prompted through the dialogues here, you can go ahead and choose the default options. So do I want to create an IntelliJ IDEA project? Yes. Okay. I'm going to create from the existing sources. Okay, so from what I'm pulling in, the project name I'm going to leave alone. You can override that if you want to. It's likely it will be best for now to just keep it so that it matches what the repository name was. Again here, choosing what to bring in. I've got a couple different directories that we'll look at. So essentially through these dialogues you can choose the default. Okay. Here I can choose the SDK. I used 1.8 when I was creating this, and so I'm going to use 8 now as well. And if there's a good reason down the road to use 7, I will let you know that in the instructions so that when you're importing your project you can set that appropriately. Okay, so now we've got the project open here. One note, so the second way that I mentioned to clone the repository in IntelliJ is to do file new project from version control. So where that option is, file new project from version control, GitHub. Okay, so if you happen to have already been inside of IntelliJ working on another project, you can access this option right from here. Okay. So let's take a look at what we've got. All right, so from the repository we've gotten the source directory and the test directory and a gitignore file and the readme. The other files and directories in here, the .idea and the .iml, those were created by IntelliJ as the project was imported. The other piece we've got is Java 8, okay, the external library there, and that was when we made the choice through the import dialog that we set the JDK. So what else do we need to be doing here? We're through these first two steps. Okay, we took the defaults through the clone dialogues. And it says here, after the project opens, add the following external libraries. For the time being, until we start using a different dependency management tool like Maven, we're going to be manually adding any external libraries. Okay, so went through this in class, but just as a reminder, I need to add JUnit and log4j to my external libraries. The way to do that is in project structure, so file, project structure. And here I can see what global libraries I've already set up. You can see I've got log4j set up there. I am also going to set up the JUnit libraries. Okay, so we went through this in class, but I'll also show you again. So what I need to do is find where IntelliJ is installed on my machine. Okay, so for a Mac, that's going to be under Applications. For the Windows users, that's probably under Program Files. Okay. Here's IntelliJ IDEA 15, the version that we're currently using. Underneath Contents and then Lib, here are all the different jars that are available to me. Okay. And for JUnit, I need the Hamcrest core library, or jar, and then the 2 JUnit libraries as well, jars as well. So I've got those 3 highlighted. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. Just prompting me and letting me know it's going to go ahead and add JUnit to my project. Apply and OK. So anytime I see the Hamcrest core, and I could have renamed this simply JUnit, and that's probably a good idea to keep things straight for those of you who won't remember that Hamcrest is actually JUnit. You'll notice that I still need to add in my log4j library. So I'm going to go back to project structure and do that. So I need to head to my modules, choose dependencies. Okay, so what we're really doing here is managing the dependencies. The things that are in our external libraries are the different files, Java files in this case, that our project is dependent on. So here you can see that I've got Java 8, I've also got the JUnit jars that I need, and I still need to add in one more library, and I have that in my global libraries already set up, which makes it easy. I need log4j, so I'm going to go ahead and add that. Apply, OK. And this is the situation that you want to have before you really start doing anything in your project here. And the exercises, you want to have Java 8, you want to have JUnit, and you need to have log4j. So that gets us through this point. Now it's time for you to start doing the real work here of the exercises. So the first task is, and this is the order I would recommend that you accomplish these in. So head into the tests list test exercise.java, read the instructions, the comments at the top, which are the instructions, and complete the work indicated. So the goal here, practice working with JUnit by writing test cases for the following interface. So we're going to, a little refresher on how list works. And as a reminder, or a recommendation here for what tests to write, you'll write both a positive and a negative test for the insert. So if you add something to a list, how would you verify that that functionality is working? You can test that that thing is really there, that the index has that item at its particular location. Same thing with removing, okay? Add something in to the list, remove it, and then verify that it's gone. So those are going to be your assertions to make sure that that's working, and likewise with a get, okay? So 3 different methods to test out. Make sure to have a positive and a negative test, okay? And also add a test for the exception. So I want you to practice with that as well. Good information in the readings about this, and we also had some examples in class that you can use as well. So let's suppose that I've done my work, and I'm just going to add a comment in here. Completing the work so that we've got a change for the purposes of this demonstration. Okay. So I'm all set there. Suppose that I've completed my map test exercise as well, which will be very similar to the list test exercise. So once you get through the list test exercise, the map test exercise is going to be very, very similar to that. And then finally, the Santa in an elevator exercise, which is kind of fun. I hope you enjoy that. Complete that one as well. Okay, so assuming that we've done all of that work, I'll go ahead and close these guys. And the next thing or last thing to do is when I'm finished, push my work to my remote repository and then do a pull request. So as I've been working through this, imagine that I've been doing various commits, and now at this point I've got one final commit to do, and then I'm going to push this up to my own repository. So I'm going to go ahead and right click here. I want to commit my change. I'll add my commit message here. So here I've finished the list test exercise for demo. I'm going to go ahead and commit. Okay, so that's all set. And at this point then, I want to go ahead and push this up as well. Okay. So the commit is done, and again here just a note that you can do all of this stuff in various places. I could have done my get work at the terminal as well. Okay, so however you prefer to interact with this, completely up to you. Okay. So you'll notice there are no additional changes here. Everything's been committed. Okay. We are set to go at that point. If you want to need hints as to where to go, remember we can always do that get status. And here Git's helping us, hey, you're a little bit ahead of the origin master by a commit. Okay. And so I'm going to do a git pull. And we should see that we're already up to date. And it's at that point then that we can do the git push. All right, so showing you a variety of different ways to accomplish the same thing here, all within IntelliJ. And many of you will find that you prefer to work at the terminal, and that's perfectly fine. It's great practice. Okay, so I'm going to flip back out to my repository here now. Again, this is my personal repository. And we can see that change has been brought in here. Here's my commit line, and if we pop in here and take a look at the list test exercise.java, we can see the change that I just made. Okay. And now it's at this point that I'm finished and I want to submit that pull request. Okay. So here we've pushed to our own remote repository, and now we want to do a pull request in GitHub. So I'm simply going to click on New Pull Request. And when you create the pull request, you'll notice the changes that are going up, and you can leave me a comment here Say, I'm all done with the week 2 exercises. That Santa challenge was a lot of fun. Create the pull request. And off that goes. Okay, so on my side of things then, I will see this, okay, and I'll know that you're finished up, and then I can take a look at the work that you've done and go ahead and provide any feedback as needed. All right, hope this helped. If you've got questions, reach out on Slack and we'll get your questions answered. Have a great week.